You know, it's one of those things that we've almost primarily have just used the southwestern corner of it. So we haven't explored much of it. Your presentation with the orals will include the whole camp. And the abutters. And some of the stuff that we're trying to teach is, besides just teaching to this exam, we're hopefully gaining knowledge for your students to talk about urban forestry or community forestry and realize what components might have to go into it.
In the scenario itself, you'll see a discussion about abutters and how you might think about it. Remember, you're not actually writing the forest management. You're trying to convince the judges that your team should be awarded the $100,000 contract to write forest management. Do you understand the distinction?
Can we quote one number?
You're up 150?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you come in with and we'll see how. Do you ever get $100,000 for a forest management plan?
Oh, yeah. You know, the thing is, I worked for the state for so long, I used to write them for nothing. You know?
And that's the usual price.
Not anymore, but, you know, that's what they were looking for. And that's why I said with the objectives, et cetera, because you give it for nothing, that's how they do it. How you doing?
Yeah, you're convincing the judges that you know the most about forest management plans. So there are other teams competing with you. I said I'm a consultant. When I get a job, they set up a panel, and the panel selects the contractor. We go in and tell the panel, if I could write a comprehensive plan for your town, or we could design your school, or we could build a new hospital, whatever the job is. We have to convince them that we're the town. We know about you. We know about forest management planning. We know little about the organizations that are involved, and we just write the best plan. Your job is to convince the judges what's the depth of your understanding of forest management. Make sense? Did I answer your question? Well, you might say, because this is fenced, it's probably not going to be great bear habitat. It's relatively small and surrounded by urban areas, so we're not thinking that your goals will probably be oriented toward bear. But because Boy Scouts camp here frequently, we think recreation is at least one of your important goals. And we have to keep some fields and open space where frisbee can be played, and we need enough wood to generate firewood for campfires. But we could also take some timber out of here, because the Boy Scouts don't have a lot of money. If we took some timber out of here, we might be able to sell some of the timber, or use the timber in other Boy Scout building programs. Those are examples that you might want to think about. I'm not demanding that you do those things, but you see what I'm saying. Because of the characteristics of Champlin, and your understanding of forest management planning, you think we can really do this well here. Does that make sense now? Yeah, look at the property, and here's what we think about what we could do, what could happen with this. Looking for potential. The judges want to hear great ideas about Champlin. And if you've got the best ideas, you're going to get the best score. And you prove you've got the best ideas by showing that they have sound forest management principles in them. My apologies, Paul.
No. Dave, tell me, how much time do they have for their oral presentation?
8 to 10 minutes.
Right. So if you're talking about a detailed management plan, you know, just the facts. We just need a highlight. Yes, Faye.
Residential development.
Right, yes. So, yeah, plats would be a set of 40 houses or something like that. You know, when they came in to those areas, it could be phase 1, phase 2, a housing subdevelopment. Yes, I'm using plat instead of in the term that you would find in a town map that would say plat 40. Plat also breaks down. Exactly, yeah.
Remember, residential housing developments have trees on them. And those trees could contribute in a positive way if the owners of those properties wanted to cooperate in the forest management. One of the things that TJ will talk about in a minute is how in downtown Providence there's a forest. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, David. I feel like I'm on the Weather Channel. Okay, page 103 deals with a vision for the future. And basically what I'm looking at by giving you this book is that it will help set you up for terminology that you might need or just a way to approach it. This is a reference guide. So a vision for the future, you'll be able to talk about what you want to do with this area in the future. And the last section I want to deal with is number 8, which is basically regional community issues. Their example is an aquifer, but in one program previously, I used to just say, the Boy Scouts threw their hands up in the air, they can't afford to live out there anymore, and they're going to change it all to a plat. They're going to change it all into selling it for houses. That's the future. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for out there? So you would look at future development or future thoughts on what happens with that. And we would hope that the Boy Scouts, like other nonprofit groups, will hold on to their land for a long time. So please use this as a reference, and like I said, there's a lot of good terminology in here. Any questions on what I presented? Why don't you guys take about 5 minutes?
What kind? It's not a silver maple. In the back, with the glasses. What kind? It is. Acer rubrum, red maple. Does anyone know what's special about this tree? There you go. It's a state tree. Fantastic. It's everywhere. So we have a group of extremely happy people. Why do you think those people are so excited? For trees. They live in a community that has parks with trees like this. Sadly, we don't, because these are southern live oaks and we don't have these trees here. But we could. We have awesome trees like this. And when they walk out of their house, they have trees like this, right? That's why those people are super excited. And we want everyone to be super excited because they have trees in their life. A lot of people think trees are maybe things like this. They're an umbrella, right? Or they're just some kind of prop that's there. But that is totally incorrect. Trees are so much more, right? Does anyone know who this guy is? Right? First person to raise their hand. Who is this? There you go, SpongeBob. Trees are power plants, right? They generate energy. They're doing tons of things all the time. There's miles and miles of interstate highway with off-ramps that you wouldn't imagine, right? Going up and down the phloem and the xylem, sending water and nutrients everywhere. They're construction workers. They're constantly building upon themselves, right? They're homes. Homes for what? Wildlife, bugs, kids that have forts in their yard. They are a feeding ground for bugs, birds, other things. They also eat themselves, right? They need to generate energy, get nutrients, water, all that good stuff. They're also attacked constantly by international terrorists. Does anyone know any international terrorists who attack trees? EAB, emerald ash borer, and Paul mentioned the other one, a big one. In the back. That's right. And I brought some live dead samples of emerald ash borer and the Asian longhorn beetle, and some bark that they have decimated, and a couple other things that we can pass around later and you guys can take a look at when we take a break. So trees also have to act like superheroes, right, to kind of get rid of those international terrorists that are attacking them. And just like everything else in this world, trees, just like everyone else, really just want to reproduce, make more of themselves, populate. So, another tree. First one, let me know what it is. It is a white oak. What made you think that it was a white oak rather than a different kind? Because it had the rounded lobes? Very nice.
Can we study something other than leaves? Because there's probably not going to be any.
Oh, sure. So let's take a look at this oak. Oak leaves, oak trees have what kind of fruit? Anyone know what kind of fruit's on an oak tree? My friend with the plaid shirt. An acorn, right. And if we look at this acorn, the acorns on oak trees are all different. White oaks have a very small cap. So if you're looking into the forest and you see these caps that are really small and a really big acorn, if there's no leaves, you can know that that's a white oak. Other kind of oaks, like a black oak, have a little bit bigger acorn cup, and this part of it is frayed a little bit. It's more, you can kind of like play with it, where this is a tighter creation. Does that make sense? So that's just another way to look at it to tell you that it's a white oak. So one of your first key topics are to understand what sustainable urban and community forestry is and why it is important. All right, sustainable. I have this up here because it's a buzzword. Everyone says sustainable all the time. And I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I'm not a big fan of the word sustainable because it's everywhere, right? We always want to make everything sustainable anyway. So if someone is asking you to write something that is sustainable, I would mention it, but you don't have to put it in everywhere because obviously we want to do something that's sustainable and not unsustainable, right? Does anyone know who this guy is? What kind of bee? He's a very famous one. Buzz Bee. He's on a TV show. It's really good. So this is the definition of urban forestry in terms of the U.S. Forest Service, who I ultimately work for through the state. So they say that my position, and every state has a position like me, so every state has an urban coordinator. And that was started in 1990 with the Farm Bill. That gave the states the power to have a comprehensive urban and forestry program. So they say that someone in my position on the state level provides technical, financial, educational, and research services to cities, states, nonprofit groups so they can plant, maintain, protect, and utilize wood from trees and forests to maximize all of their benefits. So that's kind of the level that I'm at working for the state. I'm not in the communities doing the management plans or planting the trees or telling people what and where to plant, but I am offering guidance and suggestions for how their communities can do that kind of work and obviously help out on any level that I can. So urban forestry, I think a lot of the other topics that you learn about, soil sciences, air quality, water, stormwater, all that stuff, is very technical. And forestry is technical as well, but urban forestry, I see it as more of a social science as well as it is, environmental and earth sciences. So if we're looking at planting trees, right, you're putting a tree in the ground, you have to know the science behind the tree, where it's going to go, what kind of site requirements you need, but you also have to deal with how you're going to pay for that tree. Who do you have to ask for money? What's your angle going to be when you are requesting funds for planting when your community says, we don't have any money to plant trees, we barely have money to fix the potholes? How do you coordinate the planting? Who are you going to get to do it? If no one in your community is technical enough to plant trees, are there friends groups? Are there locals that have knowledge? Are there arborists that you can talk to? How are you going to get those volunteers that may be just helping out for that day, and how are you going to train them? And then how are you going to detail your project? How are you going to give examples of what you're doing and prove that planting trees is a worthwhile experience? And how do you promote what you're doing? Those are all different things that aren't necessarily science-based, but they're more of a, like I say, a social science. You're dealing with people. It's all about relationships when you're dealing in communities and trees because they can become very sensitive topics. So other things, we could talk about urban forestry for probably the whole day, but I'm just going to give a list of some of the things that we deal with, urban foresters and people that work in communities. So typically you deal with, tree injury and diseases. Identify what's wrong with this tree. The leaves didn't come out this year, or there's a broken limb, or there's something wrong. Can you tell me what it is? We get those kind of phone calls all the time. People want to plant trees. Maybe there's someone in the state, in the town that has to sign off on that. In Rhode Island, we have a tree warden law. So each community has one person who is responsible for trees, at least one person. By law, they have to assign that person. And that's called the tree warden. Most New England states have that. Your town has one. If they don't have one, it's kind of the de facto public works director. But that person has to sign off on where trees are going to be planted or where trees are going to be removed. No, it would be public land. If you want to plant a tree in your yard, no one can stop you or tell you yes or no. But street trees, trees in parks, anything that's a public tree, usually gets the sign off by the tree warden because they're the designated expert.
You definitely want to read these.
Yes, this is, I'm sure, going to be important when you're taking your test. And we'll cover all of this. I may not call these out specifically, but we're going to touch on all these topics. So I'm going to throw a few of these in here just to break up what I'm talking about. The first person to raise their hand, if you know what kind of tree this is, doesn't win anything, but you let everyone know that you know what it is. It's all the same tree, just a couple of different